community organizer for Hope since 2017. She has dedicated herself to bringing diverse groups together to work on issues of justice and fairness. During her time at Hope, which stands for the Hillsborough Organization for Progress and Equality, in case you're new to that, she has helped organize the elder care, youth civil citation, adult civil citation campaigns. Welcome, Kaitlyn.
So thank you, everybody, for allowing me to come here to speak today about Hope. So as Pat said, my name is Kaitlyn Mazariegos, and I'm the lead organizer at Hope. And Hope is a nonprofit organization comprised of 25 interfaith congregations from across Hillsborough County, tackling issues of justice and fairness in Hillsborough County. And Hope was founded in 1988, and UU has actually been a member since 1992, so almost from the very beginning. So that was really awesome to hear. So Hope has tackled, Jerry, you can go to the next slide. Hope has tackled many problems in the 35-year history, like getting the school board to create an alternative to out-of-school suspension program for children who are suspended, and it keeps them in a supervised environment so that they can maintain their GPAs. It was called ATOS, now it's called EPIC. We got the county health department to create more dental chairs for people with very low incomes. We got HART to expand late-night bus services for 8 major routes in Hillsborough County. We got the county to establish the Hope Affordable Housing Act, which puts $10 million towards affordable housing every year. And we greatly expanded the youth civil citation program so that 800 fewer children are arrested each year and not branded for life. So we've accomplished lots of things over the years. Those are just a few of the things in the 35-year history. And we're able to tackle these big problems through a strategic and intentional process that we do every single year. So we first start with listening to people's concerns and experiences and deepening relationships through small group conversations. Our members then vote on problems to tackle, and we begin researching problems and identifying winnable solutions by meeting with experts and decision makers and looking at what other communities are doing. Meanwhile, we build our people power towards our annual Nehemiah Action in the spring, where we unite over 1,000 people to hold decision makers accountable and win commitments from the decision makers on our identified solution. We then monitor those commitments, or lack thereof, and take necessary steps like attending city council meetings, county commission meetings, holding press conferences, follow-up meetings with decision makers, etc. All of these accomplishments started with somebody's story. So, Jerry, you can go to the next slide. So I want to share a quote with you from Marshall Gans, who was a senior lecturer in leadership, organizing, and civil society at the Kennedy School of Government, because he beautifully captures the power of stories. He says, "A story communicates fear, hope, and anxiety, and because we can feel it, we get the moral, not just the concept, but as a teaching of our hearts. That's the power of a story. That's why most of our faith traditions interpret themselves as stories, because they are teaching our hearts how to live as choiceful human beings, capable of embracing hope over fear, self-worth and self-love over self-doubt, and love over isolation and alienation." For Gans, for us to transform our community, we need a narrative strategy, one that communicates a story of self, a story of us, and a story of now. So I want to unpack what he means by that. So, Jerry, you can, go to the next slide. So when I was in 6th and 7th grade, Every day I sat alone on the bus while older kids in the back taunted me for the way I looked. Most of us go through an awkward phase in middle school, but no one deserves to be harassed. So every day I wish someone would stand up for me, and I would hold back my tears until I stepped off the bus and the door closed behind me. And I would ask myself, why wouldn't anyone say anything? I'm sure some kids felt bad for me, thinking, oh, poor girl, but no one said anything. No one stood up for me. No one even stood with me, so I was alone and isolated. Can you think back to your first experience of injustice or most memorable experience? Really, stop and think. What is your story of self? What drives you? During the recession, my dad's electrical business, which was handed down from his dad, began to flounder. He wasn't getting the bids, and he had to begin letting go his employees one by one. And these are men that he deeply cared for, men he had worked with for over 20 years, and he knew how much their families were going to struggle. He felt personally responsible for their pain, and he couldn't handle their guilt. So during this time, he began to isolate himself from us, and around 8 o'clock at night, he would go back to the office to work, but instead he would go there to drink alone. So there were countless nights my mom would leave in the middle of the night to pick him up so he wouldn't get another DUI or worse. So eventually he had to close the doors of the business altogether, and he was unemployed for a couple years, and he finally got a minimum wage job fixing appliances. This was a dark time for my family, and shame, depression, alcoholism, it's a quick and easy recipe for a downward spiral. So I felt hopeless and helpless at the time, and my family was at the mercy of the market. What could we do? We were powerless. But stories help us make sense of the world and the values that we hold close. So through these experiences, I discovered I had a passion for standing up for the underdog, because I know what it feels like to be bullied and have no one stand up for you. I had a passion for changing systems and having power because reckless Wall Street bankers decided profit was more important than my family. Again, what is your story of self? What is unique about your journey? What obstacles have you overcome? And what do you have to teach others? So the story of us. So stories connect us to one another on a deeper level, and stories instill compassion in a world where we are building so many walls, literally and figuratively. It's important to understand what are the common values, experiences, and beliefs that bind us. Connecting our shared experiences requires us to ask questions, to listen, and to share of ourselves. And that last is the most important, being vulnerable. So what are you concerned about? Which values are most important to you? Who is your mentor? But then you got to dig a little deeper than that, than the what, who, which questions, to where and why questions. Where does that value come from? Why was that person so meaningful to you? So asking, sharing, and listening allows us to create a story of us and connect us. So the story of now. So stories drive us to act by creating a fierce urgency of now. They help us make sense of the world. The world as it is not how it should be. In Hillsborough County, 97,000 families and seniors are living one emergency away from homelessness. Everyone should be able to afford a safe, decent place to call home. 1,200 people with serious mental illness are sitting in our county jail right now. Our jail should not be the biggest mental health provider in Hillsborough County. The number one misdemeanor charge in Hillsborough is driving on a suspended license, which is the number one contributor to the criminalization of poverty. We should not be trapping people in the criminal justice system because they can't afford to pay a fine or a fee. So there's great tension between the world as it is versus the world as it should be. But that tension forces us to make a choice. Do we sit back and not do anything about glaring problems right before us? Do we give in to hopelessness? Do we resign to the false myth of scarcity and that there's not enough money? Do we keep our head down and focus only on ourselves? Or do we rise up to the challenge and make things better by building our power, our people power, and challenging the status quo? Next slide. So the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said in his letter from a Birmingham jail, "You may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path?" You are exactly right in your call for negotiation. Indeed, this is the purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and establish such creative tension that a community that has consistently refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks so to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. I like the last line, that it can no longer be ignored. We must live in the tension when Shirley, who's in her 70s, shares how she's moved 3 times in the past couple years because her rent keeps raising by the hundreds. We must live in the tension when Greg shares about getting handcuffed and taken to jail for driving on a suspended license right in front of his daughter in the back seat. We must live in the tension when Robin shares how her daughter died of a drug overdose and is raising her 2 grandchildren who can't get mental health services that they need. This is the way the world is, but it doesn't have to be this way. We must go beyond the feeling of anger or despair and must come together to act. This is the story of now. There are so many horrible, tragic, and unjust things in the world to the point where it can be overwhelming and even paralyzing. I know I feel that way sometimes. But through hope, we help people find their story of self and what drives them. We intentionally build relationships with each other to create a story of us. And together we are creating a story of now to take control of our community. So hope has given me hope. It is truly beautiful to see people of different faiths, races and ethnicities, and even political backgrounds, which can be surprising at times, to work together. Justice and love are the common thread that binds us all. We can agree that children should not be arrested for childhood mistakes, that children deserve forgiveness and a second chance. We can agree that people should not have to wait 3 months to get needed mental health services. Mental health is just as important as physical health. The way the world is versus the way the world should be. So for 35 years, Hope has worked to make our community a better and more just place, bit by bit. So a couple of things, what we're working on right now. So you can go to the next slide. For criminal justice, we're working to reduce adult arrests for minor offenses. So every year, about 10,000 to 12,000 people are arrested or given notice to appear for driving on a suspended license, which is often connected to somebody's inability to pay a fine or a fee, or a clerical issue with insurance. So we're pushing our sheriff and state attorney to expand the diversion program to include certain traffic offenses so that people aren't branded for life. And then they can get connected to services to help get their license reinstated and back on the road. But Sheriff Cronister has refused to meet with us for almost 3 years now. So we held a press conference on Wednesday, and Robert was there outside of his office, and we have another one scheduled for December 11th to demand a meeting and demand that criminal justice decision makers stop criminalizing poverty. For mental health, there's a huge gap in permanent supportive housing for people struggling with serious mental illness in our community. And so we're working to get the county to develop a plan to increase permanent supportive housing, which is housing that's affordable and also includes case management for people with serious mental illness. And this is key to providing stability for people's lives in our community. For affordable housing, in 2019, after a 7-year fight, we got all county commissioners to establish the Hope Affordable Housing Fund, which puts $10 million annually towards affordable housing, and it's already created 1,100 more affordable housing homes in Hillsborough. As some of you may know, in September, 4 county commissioners voted to rob $8 million from the Affordable Housing Fund, which was devastating for our community, to say the least. So right now we're working to protect the Hope Affordable Housing Fund because we met with the director of affordable housing this past week, and she's worried that the Hope Affordable Housing Act is going to be overturned by this new commission. And then around our Care for Creation work, we're also working to reduce flooding by increasing 5 stormwater drainage ponds in vulnerable low-income communities by implementing green infrastructure. So in order for us to make a difference, we need hope. In the uppercase, we need uppercase hope, and we need lowercase hope. Hope in the lowercase sense means that we have the capacity to envision a better way. The definition of hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. Marshall Gann said, "Hope is one of the most precious gifts we can give each other and the people we work with to make change." So we will not accomplish anything if we have resigned to despair. In fact, those in power want to squash our hope because hope is a threat to the status quo. So we need lowercase hope. We also need uppercase hope because it gives us a vehicle to build our people power, to challenge the status quo and challenge those in power. Justice work is hard work. It's messy work. There's no one right way to do it, so we're just trying to figure things out and move the needle in the community. And you also have to be in it for the long haul. As I said, affordable housing took 7 years to finally win, and a lot of people gave up. It took a long time. And sometimes it's 1 step forward and 2 steps back, like we just saw when the county commissioners robbed $8 million from affordable housing. But justice work is necessary work. And things will not change unless we come together and demand it. Frederick Douglass said, "Those who profess," you can go to the next slide. He said, "Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are people who want crops without plowing the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the roar of its many waters. The struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both. But it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will." I really like that last line. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. I encourage each of you to join us on March 18th and April 16th. We have a couple big events coming. It's truly an amazing experience to come together with so many diverse congregations across the community under a common value of love and justice. So March 18th, we have our rally, and April 16th, we have our Nehemiah Action, which many of you probably have attended. It's our kind of like our Hope's Super Bowl. It's a big event with decision makers. And it's really where we exercise our power and demand change. So we're going to be working on the expanding our adult arrest or pre-arrest diversion program, get a plan to increase permanent supportive housing, protect our affordable housing fund, and also work to address flooding. So I hope each of you can attend, so mark those in your calendars, and encourage you to learn more about Hope. You can ask Robert and Candy and several other members who've been around in the justice ministry for more information. Thank you.